You're listening to The Agile CTO, a podcast geared toward technology professionals, disruptors, and thought leaders. This show will aim to cover industry trends, new technologies, the life of a CTO, building dev culture, stories from some of today's leading CTOs, and so much more. If you're looking for conversations centered around where the industry is going, this podcast is for you. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the Agile CTO, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a great guest here, Anthony Velgemuth, who is the co-founder or founder and CEO of Ziflow, which is I guess you could call it an online digital proofing concept. Now, I want Anthony to tell us a little bit more about that. But before we do that, Anthony, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Maybe, Alan, how are you today? First of all, Alan's joining us as a co-host today.
It's a nice change of pace.
Yeah. It's been a while since we've done a recording, so we're a bit rusty. Yeah. So Megan and Kate, just to take notes wherever you can. But Anthony, tell us a little bit about you, your role, a little bit about Ziflow, what it does. I'm very naive when it comes to this type of business, and I'm sure some of our guests would be very interested to know what it is exactly that Ziflow does.
Great, thanks for having me. Ziflow and how I fit in. I mean, as you said, I'm a co-founder and CEO of Ziflow, also CTO, acting CTO at the moment. And so Ziflow, essentially, what we're trying to do is help creative teams, whether they're marketing teams or within brands or within agencies, helping them get reviews and feedback on all of their assets. And this could be static assets, it could be digital, banners, websites, videos, audios, etc. So we try and give them a single pane view of all their assets and give their reviewers an opportunity to comment on that and provide provide that final decision to get those assets completed. And so we've got a few thousand customers, just all over the globe, mostly in the US today, and we sort of process a few million assets as well that go through Ziflow, go through our platform.
That's amazing. And I'm guessing there's a lot of challenge in the ability to annotate certain types of media. So I know that it's probably the easiest would be a sort of digital imagery, right? But sort of the world of video annotations and audio annotations, that must have been quite a challenge to get right.
Yeah, I think PDF is actually probably the hardest content type to get right, because what you have to do essentially is take that document and make it visually as accurate as you can in a browser, because everything is we do everything through the browser. There's no app that you install, anything like that. So I'd say PDF and websites are the biggest challenge. Videos you convert to H.264 and it plays on pretty much all devices, and with 4G, 5G around the world, and even if you're not on a Wi-Fi network, you can review that video. So, and PDF, it's got you're working in different it's a bit technical now, but it works in you can have four color layers in CMYK, transparency, knockout over print, all these different print settings in PDF, and then you have to represent that in RGB, which is 3 color profile in the browser. It can never be perfect because you're going from 4 to 3 layers essentially, and it's very hard to convert it accurately, and then also have all the PDF settings apply when you convert them. So we've got like a multi-step process that they go through. But yeah, it's a fun challenge, and we keep on trying to make it faster, better, and so on. But yeah, it's a fun tech challenge for the team.
I wouldn't mind if we can just break off there and stay in a little bit that geek space, because in our world, in parts of where Anthony and I have overlapped, where we've been in the packaging realm, in retail, and a lot of their challenge is exactly that, print proofing on screen versus the olden day of having a light box, and you would physically go and, the retailers would be printing out on as accurate substrate as possible and actually try to do that color proofing in relevant light boxing, and now move that world from that like real analog printed out, trying to approve and annotate on screen or on physical proof, now to moving digital. I mean, that game must have changed also in the last 5-10 odd years, just in screen quality and like retina displays. Like, how has that how has that all played out? Because I imagine the agencies, do they not really care? Like RGB is close enough. But I know in the retail game that would often come up saying, "Oof, online proofing will never be as good. It's the screen and the RGB will never be there." But then you look at what Apple's doing. How has that played out in your guys' game?
Yeah, so Apple, I know they still work for their packaging. They still have light boxes. They still have a specific that setup that they physically look at it. I mean, they struggled during COVID, I know, to do that because they had to get people. They couldn't get people into the office and so on to do that. But there was some research done, and this was back during our Proof HQ days. But what they found was they actually had a large brand, and they tested their color on different newspapers, magazines, and so on, and then they actually looked at that color. And this was done in the US. And what they found out was that the color was off. I mean, everyone thought their brand was that red was spot on, but it wasn't actually. So they found out that, although they say that color has to be, perfect match, this Pantone color, etc., in reality, people can't see it. Right. Now, we see a distinction between the US and Europe. Europe is still very much, they'll say, they want their color 100% correct, etc. The US is slightly moved on, maybe not moved on, but moved in a different direction, saying, hey, it needs to be good enough. So online proofing is okay for our content.
Interesting. That's cool.
Now, what's interesting about the two of you guys is that, Alan, you overlapped with Anthony professionally on sort of, I guess, Anthony's previous life in Proof HQ. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that sort of played out?
Yeah, it was really interesting, and that era was quite a sort of a sliding doors moment for me in my career, actually. So it was really interesting because it was at a time when Hafele was early days as a consultancy, and I had these bubbling opportunities, but none were really working. And then I had overlapped with the founder in Proof HQ, and I was operating as a analyst / acting CTO / product owner. It was sort of like quite early. And it was super exciting, and sort of seeing that curve with Proof HQ was good fun. And my company was on my backseat, and it was always this tension of like, should I commit to this and forever kind of put my dream and my Hafele software kind of maybe not in the backseat but in the boot. And then this seminal moment came where I kind of needed to choose. It was either then commit and stay the path in Proof HQ, or like, no, I'm going to return to my original dream of Hafele software and continue building. And it was around that time where I made the choice, which I did, which was, okay, I'm going to see Hafele software through and take my business off the back seat and put it back on the front seat. And then I don't know if Anthony, we had met, or if I remember interviewing you in that process, or had we, I don't know if we knew each other before. I think we met during that time and then we overlapped for a period, but I don't think we knew each other prior to that.
No, we didn't. I think the first time I met you was in Marlow.
Yes.
We were at Matt's house, and I still remember walking to the pub there on the corner to go and have lunch. I don't remember anything else about that day, but I remember that specific walk to go and have lunch. Yeah. Don't know why. And we still had Mike Brothers there as well. He was a sales guy. And yeah.
No, interesting. And I still overlap with Mike still today. And Mike weaved a thread in our early Hafele software days. So that was that sort of time period and that overlap actually sparked off some really interesting relationships. And then, at that time, then I stepped back out of Proof HQ, and Anthony kind of took over from my role plus some, and then, the rest kind of took off. And then Hafele became my primary, and I watched from the sidelines with great interest. We overlapped a little bit later because our involvement in Hafele with Tesco and their packaging automation and their packaging journey in software, which I was connected to with them being one of our clients. Then there was another overlap saying, actually, you know what, Proof HQ has the solution here. So then we overlapped again. And so and then, since then, obviously, Proof HQ kind of moved on, and now you're on to the next thing. Yeah.
So for the listeners that don't know, Proof HQ is very similar to what you've described Ziflow. So it's also an online proofing mechanism, a digital proofing platform. So you were involved in the early days there, and if you're googling Proof HQ today, you might find some results in Workfront. You might find that they're now have been acquired by Adobe. So now it's in a part of the Adobe suite of products. And what's interesting for me is that decision to exit Proof HQ and then challenge them, right, on the same business that you've helped set up. So I'm keen to know the thinking around that and what brought you to that decision and that challenge.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, yeah, I think it was more not Matt and my decision that drove this, but so Workfront acquired Proof HQ, and the idea was, they were actually a partner of ours. They embedded Proof HQ within the Workfront platform, and the acquisition at the time made sense for them, and we were bootstrapped. We were at a sort of a inflection point as well, whether we had to go and get outside investment because we're getting to a scale we couldn't fund it ourselves anymore, and we wanted to keep the growth going. So we decided to exit to Workfront, and then with Ziflоу, the idea there was to automate creative production tasks, a bit like Zapier in the cloud, but for creative teams. And so we were building the platform, launched early 2017, and that's when some of our previous connections on heard we were back in the market and were saying they'd like to buy more Proof HQ or buy it standalone. They can't. What's happened? So as the year went by, we Matt and I then looked at the market and we said there's no dedicated solution. There's no standalone solution that's enterprise ready. So you've got the security credentials, etc. You've got the smaller platforms out there that's more SMB, but for larger enterprises that just want a dedicated solution, there was nothing out there. So we decided then, mid to late 2017 to pivot back into this space, and it was honestly we had no idea whether it was going to work or not. It's like almost a decade later, you're going into the same space, same market, and you have to say, okay, it's going to work. Luckily with SaaS, the markets have grown, so the risk actually was slightly mitigated. And as we said, there was a gap here for a solution, and we're seeing it. We still signing. Obviously, the majority of our customers are greenfield. They use email or printouts to perform these steps. So yeah,
sure. And that so it's interesting, that the actual journey starting of Ziflоу was, like I said, like a Zapier automation, but for creatives. And then I suppose in classic agile fashion, the market is coming to you, you're bumping into the same problem, kind of listening to clients going, okay, they are interested in creative agency automation, but actually clients are still begging for the same stuff that they did before. So what are you doing? If the clients are asking for it and there's a market to go to, then why not? Out of interest, whatever happened to those areas of functionality that you pivoted away from? So that original Ziflоу sort of use case of doing the Zapier for creative, is that now still a subset part of Ziflоу, or did you realize actually the market that you thought was there wasn't there, or was it a combination of now?
Yeah, it's actually worked out pretty well. So that's become Ziflоу Connect, which is our integrations platform. So we can automate different tasks, we can convert files, etc. But we can also, we've extended it. So it now allows us to integrate with other project management systems, any systems really. It's almost like Postman, you can make any call, any API call. But now we've start building native apps. So we've got the Monday.com and ClickUp and Jira apps just to make it a lot easier for customers to integrate, but super flexible. So, we've got I'm not sure if I can mention the customer, but they're a large gaming company, and they were using Dropbox, Jira, and a few other apps, and they were manually, so the designers were putting files into Dropbox, they were taking the links, copying them into Jira, and then there's approvals, update the status. We automating all of that because we can watch a folder in Dropbox, start the review process, then call Jira, update the status, put the links in there, etc.
Very cool.
Sure. I remember the early use case just for automation, just to jump back to like the current Ziflоу value proposition. And I see what you mean by the market's changed now a decade on, and what SaaS has done around the world means the concentric circle of companies that are ready to take on automation and are now the price point, I suppose, is also a bit different. Whereas in the past, those that were doing automation were these larger brands that were like willing to afford it. Now, actually, everybody in some way needs to be approving some assets to do more, whether it's on social media or otherwise. So the general market has expanded, and and everybody's education and demand has also increased. So, yeah, I imagine a whole bunch of people who are still doing email approvals, sending PDFs around, collating comments. I remember the big change when we were doing it in the retail space was like phenomenal, going from this serial approval process of, getting the PDF, even if you're emailing out the PDF to 7 people and then waiting and collating and collecting, and then to now going onto the automated annotated tool, was cutting approval cycle from like 3 weeks down to 4 days. And that was like game changer, because now you could actually do 2 versions in the same time and be done within 2 versions, whereas before you were going to version 7, 8, 9 and had lost track along the way. So now it's like a power use case, and I can see how it's not really going to go away. It's still more and more people need to approve more and more content, so it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so we do have a lot of open roles, sales, etc., Alan. So I think you're doing a great job selling Ziflow, so feel free to apply at any point.
Well, along the way, I've come to learn your guys' game quite a lot from doing it from the buyer side. So if I ever need a side gig, I'll give you guys a shot.
So the thing that surprised me, and I'm not sure why it does surprise me, but we talk about the 3 C's and what are the challenges? Why do companies buy Ziflow? Now, if you have a few pieces of assets you need to review from a small group, great, you can use email, it's not a problem. But once the different asset types, you've got a lot of content or large files, it becomes a need. You need a solution. So we talk about all the different content, and then you've got a lot of people involved now. You've got more and more different groups that need to give feedback. So that's actually increased. That we see an increase in that as well. So we see almost like on average a 1-to-5 ratio, and that includes even our small accounts, our free plan, etc. So for one creator, one person sharing, there'll be at least 5 people giving feedback. And as you know, I mean, some of these assets have like hundreds of people on them, literally giving comments, all of them. And then compliance is the other angle. So we're seeing a lot more compliance driving the need for a system. So you need these audit trails, you need the reports, and these companies being audited. We're seeing now with some interest on the crypto side, where there's more regulation coming in, and they need to all their ads need to be approved. You're seeing in the UK a lot of these companies getting banned from advertising because they're not regulated. Wow. So that compliance kicking in. So that's across different industries. So any of those sort of challenges they have, then they need a solution, and it's just becoming more and more.
We can. Sorry, Guy, I'm sort of jumping around topics, but
sure.
On when we were early podcast days, and coming up with the name of the Agile CTO, and sort of trying, and the beauty of that term is both agile being a term in the software industry, but also just the verb of being, the adjective of being agile. And you've always stood out for me as one of those classic cases, because you've actually run the CTO title in multiple frames and in multiple kind of wearing the CTO hat in different environments. Yeah, so I've always, and you having done this now a couple of times and in different environments, what does that being agile as a CTO to you mean, and how does agility manifest itself in your day-to-day, right? So I mean, keen to hear on your take on it.
Yeah, the CTO role, it's probably like a lot of the C-level C-suite roles, is that as a company scales, it gets bigger, you need to be able to do different things. So I remember at Proof HQ, to give you an example, Matt went on holiday, my co-founder, and then he's like, I've got a few demos, you'll have to do them. And I was literally like sweating. I I remember it was a Monday morning having to do a demo to this UK company. I was like, I can't sell. Now it's, sort of 10 years on, you feel super comfortable doing it. And I think it's not being able to do everything, but being able to, you have to adapt, you have to learn. And I think, any CTO, you have to adapt to these different environments. And I think, so one of the key aspects is the tech side. You need to gain the respect from the team. So, don't, at Proof HQ, we were PHP. I was Java background, Java engineer background, didn't know anything, but architecture is all the same. So you need that tech aspect, but I think the other side is the product piece. I mean, if you're a software company building products, you need to be relatively strong. You'll have VP products that are much better at it, but early days, you just can't afford it. So you need to be really strong in building products and then seeing how that works in an environment with your customers. So up until just the other day, I mean, now it's too many, but I would look at every single support ticket coming in, trying to understand what are customers saying, where are the issues, etc. And it's just being in the detail, unfortunately, in the early days. But as as things get bigger, and this is still one of the areas I'm working on, is getting then your team in place. It's like, okay, letting go, getting and finding the right team members to take that on. That, because I'm sort of a startup, from zero to bootstrap. So that's, we haven't had, large scale organizations. I find it harder to go and recruit the right people to get in. So, our advisors and so on now help a lot with that, which is super useful.
So you're a technical guy. From your background is technical. You mentioned Java. How much of that how much of that muscle do you still get to exercise these days? Do you still find yourself looking over a dev's shoulder every now and then, or are you sort of too far removed from that, or too busy to do that these days?
Yeah, so I'm literally just in sales and marketing at the moment. That's the only place I live there as CEO now of Ziflоу. You sort of move in the areas where you got to focus. Tech side's doing okay. I'd say the last time I actually looked at code, which was quite interesting. It was, I think it was 2018, or no, it was beginning 2019, and we had a very large migration to complete, and there were some issues. Basically 3 weeks working night and day, and when some of the devs went to sleep, I would debug and so on, and I was like, right. I'm not missing it anymore. I'm not one of those guys that still like to dabble. I'm quite happy to, I'll sit in spreadsheets and so on. That's where I get my tech kick. So yeah.
Cool.
All right. It's quite interesting that you've been involved in two. I mean, Proof HQ, I assume, was a startup as well from Bootstrap. So you've been involved in two startups, and both of them seem to be very highly successful companies today. That's quite rare. You usually hear a story. You hear the bodies lie behind you in the startup world, right? You normally try 6 things, and then maybe the 7th thing takes hold. But that doesn't seem to be part of your history. Do you think that is something special within you, or do you think it's just been luck?
Yeah, I'm sure you can be lucky twice. So it does happen. I'd say, Matt, my co-founder, I mean, he is the serial, founder. I mean, he founded his first company in the late 90s. I obviously moved from SA to, so obviously, but I moved from South Africa to the UK, and was stuck working for certain companies that didn't have much flexibility. But Matt founded various companies, and he had a few runs. I think he gained a lot of experience out of that. And I've met him by working for one of the companies before Proof HQ. He found it. He had already left. That's still going, but it wasn't anywhere successful. But so I've seen, and I've always worked for small companies, so I've seen at least enough as the engineer, as an employee, like some of the things I didn't enjoy from an employee point of view. So at least now managing the teams, and hopefully people feel that way, but you sort of know the things you don't like and you don't want to do. But in terms of making it successful for customers, and really it's just we're trying to solve problems at the end of the day. So building a product, and and we just stick in the area we know best. I mean, we see some of these other companies growing at like insane rates, But Matt and I know the agency and the marketing and creative team. Well, not that we worked in it, but we've always built solutions for it. And just sticking in that area, I think, has helped a lot. So we haven't veered off into different areas too much. So I think that's probably why it's helped to be successful.
Yeah, so like playing to the strength and realizing your strength and sticking with it, and like mastering it further, and then solving the next set of problems even better than the time before. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just double down on that. Now you can talk to customers, and within 10-15 minutes, I can see their world, I can see their workflows and so on. Now the hard thing is how do we move that knowledge to the rest of our team, and as you scale. So that's the next challenge we have, is educating the rest of our team about this. And I think that's where you have to get industry expertise and so on within the team as well. But yeah, I mean, it's just sticking with what we know, basically. I mean, it's no secret recipe or anything like that.
Just on that, I think that challenge of growing and having the right structure in place for the size that you are, but also the size that you want to be, and that whole throwing, swinging the ball to where the player is going to be, not just where the player currently is. Could you paint a little bit of a picture of the Ziflоу team now, sort of how it's structured, like sort of the scale of it, just for listeners to get a sense of how you've structured sort of sales, marketing, technical, and sort of the ratios between them to give a sense of the team?
Yeah, so we have all the various bits. So we have our engineering team. The majority, bar one, is in Poland. So we've got developers, QA, product design, all based out in Poland, and that's about, I'd say, a third to a little bit more of the company. So it is always a little bit more engineering heavy, and then sales and marketing and the onboarding, the customer success teams are based out in the US for the majority. And that's split. I mean, again, with sales, it's we've got outbound reps. So these are people just going outbound and emailing, calling prospects, and to get leads in. You've got the inbound reps, which anyone who sort of contacts us and so on, will reach out and say, hey, do you need help, or do you want to have like your own process in terms of buying? So we have those reps, and then we have the sales team, so the actual closers, so SMB, mid-market, enterprise. And the marketing's interesting. I mean, we've just sort of grown that team quite a bit, the actual creative design, that production side. So we have 3 motion designers, we have multiple designers, we have content writers, etc. So big part of we obviously, with most of our businesses, the organic leads convert the best. They the lowest cost, they're the best. So getting content and getting good content out, I mean, that's what we preach on the website is this whole creative excellence. So we have to do it, and it's hard to get right. I mean, it takes a lot of work. So marketing, we've really focused on that side, on the marketing part, and then support's also based out in Poland, and finance. So we're just over 100 people, 105 or something.
Sure.
Yeah,
no, that's cool.
Reasonably big. I mean, we can probably relate to the content creation, but we've been on the journey a little bit now, but obviously not to the degree that Ziflow's been doing it. But we're sort of finding our feet in that space, podcast being one of them. But the avenues of generating content, blog posts, just getting our knowledge out there to the community, we found is highly valuable to get engagement from the community in general, and obviously potential sales that may come from that. So yeah, I think it's a different world now in terms of that marketing aspect of just getting your content out there. It's I'm trying to think of the term that Dan Sanchez mentioned, Alan, what he called it, but it's effectively this mechanism to just make clients want you as opposed to telling them what they need.
It's brand. Yeah, it's brand, right? So we had a meetup. It was now in December with the sales team, and one of them was saying, why would someone buy Ziflоу over one of our competitors? And I was like, well, why do you buy Apple over Dell or HP? And like, Apple is most amazing. I'm like, well, it does exactly the same thing. I mean, and people would go like, people are fanatical, right? So it's like, yeah, as soon as you start talking about, things, about the expertise, etc., you start building that brand, and that just takes so much effort and time to build that. And yeah, as you guys know with the podcast, I mean, it's a lot of work. I mean, you have multiple pre-calls, you have multiple people on this, you have to get it. I mean, you invest a lot of time, but people do see that, at the end of the day, when you get it out there, people actually do value that, because the average person sees about 10,000 ads a day, online, TV, radio, etc. So you're getting a lot of content thrown at you. So if they do read something or they do listen to it, I mean, that's a big thing.
Sure. To jump back to something you sort of passed on earlier around what might have been our previous chat a couple of weeks back, obviously the trajectory and the execution of these two similar domain products, but two very different two very different environments. You've done the one less VC, and this one sounds like more of a VC path. I'd be keen to hear about the primary differences between those journeys, and any kind of like myths that you've debunked in yourself of what you thought the VC journey would have been like, versus any pleasant surprises or not so pleasant surprises that you felt on that path. Yeah, I think also from a listener point of view, those entering the product space and are both tempted by the VC path or put off by the VC path, would be cool to actually hear from someone that's walked it and is currently in it.
Yeah, it's obviously also different times that we were doing it. So Proof HQ, Matt started, the first sort of project in 2007. I joined him in early 2010, and we were one of the first. There weren't that many companies doing it fully remote, so we were fully remote at the time. Engineering in Poland, and hosting in the US, selling in the US. So, and we were a UK company. That was relatively novel for a startup at the time. So the way the cost structure, the remote nature of the business allowed us to bootstrap it, so we could get quite far with every dollar we made. And it got with Privilege, it got to a point where we were just also again 100 people, similar size to what we are now, and we said to keep that almost double year-on-year growth rate, we'd need funding, because now you just need more people, and just doing that hand to mouth is very hard. Now with Ziflоу, things are we similar model. We UK company hosting in the US, 80% of our customers are in the US, and our engineering teams in Poland. But just overall, building software today, it's easier and it's harder. So easier, you've got more tools. So we use multiple tools for identity management. We don't write it, we just use Auth0, and then your billing systems, etc. So you can just use those off the shelf tools, and that makes it a lot cheaper. But customers expect a lot more. I remember the first UI in Proof HQ. I mean, we didn't need much, but with Ziflоу, I mean, the bar is much higher now. We've got Ziflоу Connect, which we didn't have. That connect. I mean, we didn't need that many integrations. Now we integrate right from the creative production tool. So Adobe Creative Suite, Final Cut Pro, we have extensions there that the designers or creatives can just start the process from there. Feedback happens. Most people don't even have to go into Ziflоу. You can start off from Dropbox, Drive, Creative Extension, etc. And then we can deliver that file where you need it. And we'll automate that whole process. So there's a lot more development you need to do. And I talk about this iceberg effect where, if people look at different competitors and, they might see, similar features, but the scalability underneath that, we've got very large companies using us, with, doing thousands of assets a day, thousands of folders and users. There's all that scalability. So now I think raising money definitely makes it easier, because it gives you the funding to do it. So we started the sort of the seed round was Matt and myself, but to keep the growth, have that growth rate, cost is just higher. And even now, I mean, we see it now with the whole market. I mean, I don't know how it is in SA, but the US and Europe, I mean, wages are just going up at an insane amount. So you need to go. You need the funding to help you to move to the next step. But there are also advantages, because they bring a lot of experience, the connections. Our CEO is through one of our board members. We never found him if it wasn't for for them. So there are some advantages to it as well. Yeah.
So it sounds like, because for every story you hear of, the VC path being desirable and undesirable, it sounds like in order to get it on the desirable side, it really is about, I suppose, not rocket science, but getting the cultural match and the right alignment with the type of VC firm and the VC firm that is sufficiently engaged so that you could even have that opportunity where one of their board members actually becomes part of the team. And
so we're lucky. I mean, Ferris from Companion, he was an advisor for us at Proof HQ. He was with OpenView. Okay. So they invested in Ziflоу. So we were quite lucky in that regard that we knew him pretty well. And we had his background, sort of knew his background and what he could bring. And, he made some great introductions for us at Proof HQ. So that helped a lot. We are looking, obviously, at our next round now in Q3. So it'll, we'll have to go through that process again. And it's hard. I mean, it really is hard because you're trying to find the right fund, the right, people to work with and so on. And it has to be a match both ways. So it's, you might meet, the thing about it is it could be a lot of no's and you never know why people say no. It just isn't a match. I mean, the stars have to align perfectly because most of them only do a handful of investments a year. So you might meet 30, 40, 50 and, one says yes. And that can be very, very tough if you, if you're not used to
and
that.
Never mind the time and energy to invest in the investment decks and the pitching that goes on behind each of those. And while you're also making sure that the tech team is functioning and the careers are developing and the sales and marketing is on point and that finance and operations is happening. And then also making sure that your potential investors are getting the best of you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It is it can be very distracting. So, I usually meet with VCs regularly, either the analysts or do updates and so on, but decided this year, Q1, Q2, we're heads down, and it's made a difference. I mean, we just focus on the business. We'll run a process in Q3 and that's it. And that's, they say you should always be fundraising, but I think it can also get quite distracting, because they'll always say something, you have some saying, oh, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. And you're actually going, oh, maybe I should, you start doubting yourself and you start wondering, and then, just go, hold on, let's just focus on what we do best and just heads down and execute. That still is the best way.
Yeah. I was about to ask because, there's those two schools of thought, like in the same way, you should always be hiring for talent as well, you should always be fundraising. And I can imagine, especially in the product game. But maybe it's almost that balance of, well, if you fundraise correctly and properly with the right partner, that gives you the right amount of runway for your next annual target or your 2-year target, then you ought to be able to put your head down and focus Q1, 2, 3, and we'll pick us up again in Q4 because that's when it is, as opposed to this like perpetually dating and perpetually pitching, which must be exhausting. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
I think you mentioned the challenge is scaling, individuals, people growing from a company of 25, 50 to a company of 100 must have been quite a big thing. And I think you mentioned the challenge being a hand to mouth thing. So it's like there's this constant, you're using your growth to fund your financial growth to fund your talent growth, and that is not sustainable over the long term. Is that something that you would agree with, or what advice would you give a company that's realizing they're hitting the wall of their people growth? What should they do now to get through to that next phase, getting to the 100, 120 people that you foresee the business requiring?
Yeah, I mean, so SaaS, this model is your costs all up front. So with Proof HQ, it wasn't back in 2010, 2011. We weren't that used to that whole model, like you're burning cash here and you need to run a profit, right? That's how people always thought about it. But people, we've all become more comfortable with like, okay, there's going to be a burn rate, but it's got to be within certain multiple of the growth that you're doing, and it's trying to get that right. So I'd say we had this at Proof HQ, we have it at Ziflоу as well. It's like it's that point where you want to scale your sales and marketing. That is the hardest piece because that's where a lot of the risk lies. If you got a relatively okay product, and our gross retention's high, so we know once we've got customers on, they'll stick around. But it's scaling that sales and marketing, and that's where the even the people risk and the growth risk comes in, because you have to get all these dials right in the business. And now you're saying, okay, you're throwing money at this, and you're saying, okay, I've got to grow the sales team pretty quickly, because you've got to go and try and double again next year, and it's obviously compounded. So you have to go and double whatever you did. You have to do in 1 year what you did in all the time you did so in 5 years before. You have to do it in 1 year, and then you have to do in one what you did in 6. So the pressure is on, and it's always trying to take the pressure off the team, and that's a big thing. And then just having repeatable processes in place. So as you scale, and that's always hard, is like saying, okay, how can we make things repeatable? Engineering is not easy, but now we're working on marketing and that process, and making that engine repeatable, and then sales as well with some new business and so on. But yeah, I don't have any specific advice. It's just it's a tough game. It is a tough game, but there's the playbook is there, so you don't have to make it up. That's the one thing I'd say. So find people that have done this or have seen this and know what the playbook is, and take the advice. You're never going to be able to follow it 100%, because you might be looking for a C-level hire and you can't find the right person, so it takes longer and you have to do something else. You find a different person, but it is it's the playbooks are there. You have to try to follow them as close as you can, and just work within what you get, or that sort of the card you got.
I would imagine some of the advice or some of the feedback you're getting is challenging to your ego, right? So in other words, what I mean is, you might have one view of how to do things, and you might have had success in that in previous worlds, and then you break into a new size or new size of enterprise, and all of a sudden the advice that you're getting is counter to your intuition, is counter to what you've learned and how you've grown. And how have you ever hit a wall like that, and how have you sort of worked through that?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it literally just happened to me in the past, I'd say 6 to 9 months. We're very, very used to, our strengths. We're building, startups. So I like flat structures, especially in engineering. Don't need many managers. You have your Scrum teams, you have Scrum Master, but everyone's working together as teams. And okay, you have a VP of engineering who can make final calls and decisions, but and you have more senior and junior people, but everyone's working as a team. So it's not this hierarchy. And I love that structure, and it works well, and I find it works the best. But as soon as you get to 50 plus people and so on, you need some more management. Now, engineering can actually grow quite large without needing all those layers. But sales, marketing, support, you need management a lot quicker. Every 5-6 people you almost need a manager, to help things coordinated, etc. Now, for me, that's in terms of getting that feedback and sort of trying to apply that same principle from engineering to the others. I mean, I found that really hard, and and I had to go through that pain first to see. I had to feel the pain before I realized, okay, it's one of those things. So, and I've heard you guys talk on previous podcasts about your kids, and how you can how you can be a good dad and so on. And I heard this. I don't know where I heard it, but someone said, you can give anyone advice. They will more than likely not follow it. But when you get the advice and then they experience it, the learning from that is just so much quicker than when they didn't get the advice. And when you experience that yourself, you see, okay, and I've gotten better at giving advice, because I was always like, why are people not listening? I mean, I literally said this. Are they not? I mean, come on. And you sort of then, okay, and the same happened to me. I mean, I literally went through that. It's like, the board, they'll give you the advice and you'll hear it, but you don't know how to actually action on it, because you haven't experienced it. And once you do, you go okay, now you can adapt and you can quickly act accordingly.
That's funny. I think it was Guy and it was you and I, Guy. We had this similar conversation about a week ago, going, sometimes it's really easy to hear the advice and give the advice, and it's just not absorbable, because the person almost either discounts that advice as being, well, no, my situation's a bit different, or remember, I've got a different skill set, or I've come from a different background. So that learning and wisdom is somehow discounted, and then you fall into the same hole, and then you have to introspect. And if you introspect, you then realize, now I get it. Like now I get it. And in a way, there's almost like it's the same reason you can tell your teenager to do what they need to do, and they are gonna crash their car, and only then will they realize, maybe I shouldn't drive like a complete idiot.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's sort of like a teenage mentality applied to professional life. It's almost like the people around you are telling you, don't do that, you're going to hit your head here, this is what the challenges are you're going to face in 6, 12, 24 months time, and you go, nah, don't worry about it, I'll figure it out, don't tell me what to do, I know better. And then it inevitably happens, you go, oh, should have listened to Dad, I should have given that more thought.
Yeah. But it's funny, if you apply that, you can say, and we've had this before, it's interesting, Anthony, how you kind of confirm it, that we sometimes will have, okay, well, what age is what part of the business? And you go, okay, look, our sales and marketing team, it's like a troubled teenager, or our technical team, no, it's like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old. It kind of can stand alone, and it won't make a complete embarrassment of itself. But then another part of the business is, no, they're like a 6-year-old. So you can't leave it. It will wreck the kitchen. Like you can't. And you sort of, if you identify that and you realize you also can't make a 6-year-old behave like a 22-year-old, it will just take time for that maturity and the learning to kind of seep in. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like I think sales and marketing is just much harder because engineering is very black and white. You release a piece of code, it either works or it doesn't. The trick is obviously the actual product and the solution you're delivering, and whether you get product market fit. But there you can iterate very quickly, etc. On the sales and marketing side, marketing is a major lag. I mean, you put something out there, you get a few views on a video, or you get this and that. I mean, it's a big investment over a long period of time, and then getting that flywheel going on that side takes just longer, and you have to be patient. And we saw it at Proof HQ, and we're seeing it at Ziflor. At some point, you get that brand recognition where just enough people get to know you where they talk about you. So Matt and I got known as the online proofing guys. Now we're trying to step away from that term because Ziflor does more than online proofing. So we sort of changing the messaging, but you get that you get a tipping point on that. And I was speaking to another CEO the other day, and he's like, we're launching a new product, what do we do? I said, you can do what you want, you can, if you find the right channels to talk about it, great, but otherwise it's just like you got to talk about it a lot over a long period of time. So there's no substitute for that time. You just can't. I can resonate. Marketing is a lot. It's also this dark art. So adding to the patience, and that you can't just turn this lever and expect anything to happen. There's also a dark art to it. It's not science. You're dealing with human attention, and you're dealing with a lot more dynamic stuff happening. So it's interesting. Cool.
And we've sort of spoken about Ziflor now and your professional history, but I'm keen to know where your career started. So when you were in high school, university, early days of your career, what was your aspirations, and did you see yourself ending up where you are now, or is this a very different world to what you perceived for your future?
Yeah, very boring history, to be honest. So I wanted to be in coding, from 7 years old when I got my Commodore 64, cool. And coding from a book, and you're making these games, and most of the time they didn't work, and you go over the code 100 times and you copied it exactly from the book. But it was frustrating. And so I studied IT in Johannesburg, and started working sort of at the same time. I mean, the course back in the late 90s was very easy. In my third year, I had four classes. That's it. On a Friday morning, I had 2 hours of classes, and that was it. So I started working full time. And actually, oddly enough, I started working, I worked for a few companies, but then I ended up at an agency, and they were doing new brand design, new totally rebrands of big companies like Barlow World and Sassel had a rebrand. This agency did it. We developed the software to roll that out, so you could business cards, the ads, etc. So we developed that software, and that's where we learned a lot about this color conversion and so on. And worked for the same company in the UK in the beginning, and then After that, did a stint in travel, which online travel, which I didn't enjoy that much. I mean, it wasn't my cup of tea. And then back into the space. So yeah, and then landing up as CEO. I mean, I always wanted to have my own business, so I was lucky finding Matt as my co-founder. It's very hard to do it on your own. You see some of these founders that just do it solo, and I take my hat off for them. I mean, that is just so hard. So finding the right co-founder makes this so much easier.
Right. And you were predominantly inward focused in that co-founder relationship. So you mentioned Matt was doing the demos and sort of the client facing stuff. Is that sort of the dynamic that you guys still hold today, or is there a slightly different dynamic now? Because it sounds like you were more tech focused, more inward focused, and then Matt was sort of like sales and client focus.
Yeah, so Matt's not as involved. I mean, he's been involved the last few quarters, and more on the marketing side and so on. But he's not as involved with Ziflоу as he was back at Proof HQ. So I've shifted my focus a little bit. It's more spread product and sales and marketing, but we have a new CEO who joined. So so he's taken over that go-to-market function. So I've had to learn pretty quick in being able to do the external facing stuff as well.
Cool. And just jumping back to some family stuff, because I think between the three of us, we have a whole pile of kids, and I'm not the only one with the size family. How are you finding this entrepreneur founder and the pace that's required for VC growth on family dynamic and kids? Because I mean, that's a whole other thing. While you're also growing a business, you're growing a family and youngsters as well. Yeah, how are you finding that whole journey?
Yeah, I mean, running a business is much easier than raising kids. That's a given. And I'd say, yeah, I mean, it is obviously hard balancing it out. So my wife also travels quite a lot, so she just right back this morning. But being able to work from home makes a huge difference. So we're remote again from the start with Ziflоу, and the whole team works remotely from home usually. And that helps a lot with the kids. So when I leave here at 6, it's literally 10-second walk from my garden office into the house. Cool. See the kids and so on. Yeah, it's always a tough balance. I mean, it's not. It was hard with it, because we have a set of twins. They're 3.5 now. That first year and a half was tough. The lack of sleep and so on. But it is getting better.
Yeah, I can only imagine how hard twins must be. I mean, I've got a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, and it is rough just with those ages. I cannot imagine having to deal with that baby phase 2 at the same time. I mean, our marriage barely survived 1.
Yeah, I remember the first night we brought them home, and I said to my wife, I'll do the night, and literally it was zero sleep, because you have the one, then you pick up the other one, you just keep on feeding, and I was shattered the next day. I'd say the one thing though is if you want to start a company, just do it in your 20s or whatever. Just don't do it in your 40s, because being in your 40s now, I mean, I'd say at Proof HQ, I could definitely do more hours. I spread the hours now over the weekend. I'd say if I do some extra work, but lack of sleep with kids, and you just don't have that much energy anymore to go super late and sleep 5 hours. I can't do it.
And between your professional responsibilities and your family responsibilities and the time that you spend there, is there any gap for anything else? I mean, do you have some sort of personal passion that you're involved in, some sort of hobby, anything that you do on the weekends in that 3 to 4 a.m. time slot where you have a minute to yourself?
Yeah, I play squash, so that's the hobby. So my eldest daughter's now slowly getting into it, I think. So she's got some trial tournament thing on Sunday, so taking her to that, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's the thing I like to do, so is play squash. So I'll do that. Usually I try get out, at lunch times, maybe 3 times a week, and then play some matches in the evenings and so on. So it's nice and quick, 45 minutes, and that's it. So there's just no time for golf or anything much longer than that.
Yeah, it's got the right kind of profile of that exertion. Yeah, whereas golf, you're kind of spreading out the same amount of exertion over 5 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 hours, and you just won't be as popular at home. And also, I mean, yeah, and also I like the competitive nature. I used to go to a little bit of gym and stuff, and I found that like I struggled, but I like having that competitive, and that's probably works well, with just my personality and you're starting company. So you need to be a little bit competitive to do this. So that squash works really well. So you can compete and still lose, and you can get used to losing a lot as well. So yeah, so getting you ready for that next fundraising process.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Awesome. So I think for the last 5 minutes, Anthony, if you don't mind, I want to throw some questions at you, and just to get our listeners to get to know you a little bit better as a person. How we normally do this, Alan, is I'll go sort of one for one, but I'm not sure if you have the questions that we've prepared in front of you. So I'll just run through them, and we can segue if we need to. So let me start off with the first one. What is your latest? That's probably an easy one. What's your latest must-read or watch or listen, for that matter, and why do you think people should be engaging with it?
Well, yeah, Alan did such a great job selling Ziflоу, so it has to be the Agile CTO podcast. I mean, so yeah, honestly, I used to read more business books than I do now. But I'll probably say, now and then I'll listen to podcasts. So the All In podcast is good. That's a pretty good podcast. All In podcast. Yeah, it's got David Sachs and a few others. They're VCs now, they're operators, so they'll cover various topics. So it's a super popular podcast and quite entertaining. So I'll spend an hour a week listening to that, and otherwise if I read, I'll try fiction books. So just try
get your mind out of there.
Disengage from work stuff.
Okay, and favorite fiction author at the moment?
So Jeffrey Archer is really good. I'm reading sort of Ken Follett. So it sort of in fiction, that's the two authors I quite enjoy at the moment. So it seems like I like these series that go on and on, like these drama series. So it's like 1,000-page books, so I can read that for like 6 months.
Sure.
So, okay. And your most professionally influential person in your life right now, who would that be and why?
Yeah, I'd say it's a combo. I mean, Matt, my co-founder, obviously, as I said, it's really hard doing this stuff. So, we both lean on each other. So, yesterday morning we had a tough morning, so we could have a chat. So that's good. And then, your family, my wife, it's never, with any startup, the highs are really high and the lows are really low. There's no in between. So, being able to share that and share the pain with someone is always useful. So,
right. Okay, so the next one, I'm trying to find a way to phrase it. I phrase this question differently in every episode, but I'll try and get it to where it makes the most sense. So we all have people around us, and we know that people have opinions about us. Do you know of any opinions that people hold about you that you find frustrating and disagree with, and what would that be?
Yeah, so it goes back to what we spoke about earlier, where, people, I think, sometimes, and this is, I think mostly opinions are also just your opinion of an opinion that's probably false. But, you think like, people think, you don't want to, listen to their advice, etc. But you just don't always know exactly how to go and execute on it. So, you have to process that. But yeah, you do take it on board and so on, and, at least gotten better. But I think that is it. But I honestly, as you get older, hope, you start shedding that, focus on what people do think. It takes a while, but yeah.
Yep. And then the opposite of that is, what is your sort of most controversial opinion right now about any topic? What do you think people would find controversial about an opinion you hold?
That's a good question. So it might be quite controversial. I don't know if it's controversial or not, but yeah, I'd say, in terms of, where we are with energy and in Europe, I mean, gas prices going up, and all that. So it's, I think, some countries have stepped out of nuclear too soon. So we should actually be building more nuclear. It's very safe. It's clean, and it's much cheaper.
It's got a bad rap.
we can get green at some point, but yeah, you should be building nuclear now, for the next few decades. Right. So while we figure out the whole green technology.
Yeah. Right.
Cool.
Okay. And then sort of the last question I have for you is, what are you currently procrastinating over, and why do you think you are?
Good question. Don't know, actually. I think, so I know I think at some point it is probably in work-wise, I think it's nice to have a base, nice to have an office. So Derek, our new CEO, is pushing to get us to get an office in Dallas. We had the same thing at Proof HQ, where we had a little bit of a hub in Dallas, and when we started Ziflоу, I was like, we're going to be fully remote all the time. We're not going to veer from that. So that's the one decision I'm like, trying to delay it, but I think we should do it. I think it makes sense. It's nice to go to a spot and have meetings, because now we book hotels, book meeting rooms. It can be a hassle, so it's nice having a little hub somewhere.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's a bit serendipitous, hey, Al? It's like,
exactly
people,
where we are.
It's exactly where we are. And that brings us to the end of what we needed to cover here today. So I just want to say thank you, Anthony, for making the time to join us for this hour and getting to know you a little bit better. I think our listeners will find your insights incredibly valuable. So thank you. And where can our listeners reach out to you if they wanted to get in contact with either you or Ziflоу, or to get some more insight into your world? Where can we find you? Yeah, so Ziflow.com. You just go there, ZIFLOW.com, and then I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest. I'm also on Twitter, but LinkedIn, it's the easiest to find me there. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
At Heyfully Software, we build dev teams that deliver and fix those that don't. Dev teams fail to deliver all the time for countless reasons, from lack of skills to barriers in culture, from politics to process, from silos to egos. Whatever the reason, it's time they deliver. This is why we exist. From enterprise to startups, we craft high-performance dev teams focused on end-to-end delivery. Visit Heyfully Software at outsourcehs.com to learn more.
You've been listening to the Agile CTO. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you're listening with Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to leave a quick rating of the show. Simply tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. Until next time.